Good time of day to all of you, my chess friends. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky with my final report on the Chess Olympiad recently concluded in Baku, Azerbaijan, part of my Russian Schoolboy live shows. I hope you all guys are sitting there comfortably, because I would like to talk a lot with you guys about not only about the Olympiad. Of course, we congratulate the US men's team for taking gold medals, deservingly so. They did it. The US was dominating chess Olympiads before World War II. Well, managed to win once when the Soviets didn't come to Haifa, Israel. I believe in 1976 it was. And I played for the US team, of course, in the 1990s, and we competed as hard as we could. Came very close once in winning it. But I'm glad that this crop of players finally did it. Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, Wesley So, Sam Shankland, and Ray Robson. All there. And you see the captain, John Donaldson, all that fixture in the US Olympic teams since the 1980s. And of course, not to be forgotten, their trainer, back there hiding just behind Hikaru Nakamura on the left side of the team picture, you see Alexander Lenderman. Well, I'm sure they all did a fantastic job, and a round of applause, US players. In the women's event, China regained their top spot, which they somewhat surprisingly couldn't hold for about last 10 years. The last three Olympiads prior to this one were won by the Russians, and before that Ukraine, I believe. But I mean, the Chinese female players, obviously, they're still one of the best in the world, and they proved it this time. Obviously led by world champion Hu Yufan, who reiterated her decision not to compete in women's world championships under the current system. I'll remind you that the current system calls for a knockout tournament, and the winner is announced the world champion and then gets to play the match with Hu Yufan, basically, right? With defending world champion. And she got tired of the dog and pony show, and she says, you can have it. I totally support her decision, one way or another. Either they say, play in a knockout, and if you don't, then you lose your title, or don't bother her, with these matches. Well, so anyway, where are you guys? I need to hear you speak in form of typing your questions, because this is, in my opinion, an important show. I will get started with the chess, and maybe I would start a little slow this time, because I want to make sure that everybody has gathered around before I talk about the main events. I will start with the game, a different game of Wesley So, not the one that you now see on the chessboard. So that's from the last round, and that's why I call drama. But before that, I want to show a game Wesley played in the previous round, round 10, and in the match against Georgia, where the US was in leading position, of course, but being in leading position is one thing, as it turned out, they had a very little margin, and the match was very difficult for the US team. I guess the burden of leadership is tough, and surprisingly, Hikaru Nakamura suffered a loss with the white pieces against Mechedvashvili. Well, I've heard the name, I know he's over 2600, but come on, Hikaru is, well, I guess that's nerves. And Fabiano Caruana had the black pieces on board one against one of the heroes of the Olympiad, the leader of the Georgian team, Bahadur Jabava. And Fabiano held a draw quite comfortably. In fact, maybe he was better at some moment, but still, the points had to come from somewhere. And this is where Sam Shankland and Wesley So came through. to secure a match victory. What's cracking? Well, the usual stuff, cracking jokes and yet talking some serious chess business. Yeah. So here we are. Let's start with this game. Pansulaya white, So black. Now, Wesley had one of the best performances in this Olympiad. I think he was outdone by possibly the last board, the substitute player on the Ukrainian team, Andrei Volokitin, who had a tremendous result. I read somewhere he had the best rating performance ever in history of chess Olympiads. I think he only surrendered one draw. The old man Eugenio Torre, incredible performance, and he's in his 60s. He played all 11 games for the Philippines, his team, and he scored 10 out of 11. I mean, maybe he didn't face the best opposition, but nonetheless, talking about veterans' performance. Obviously, the Russians boasted, first Nepomniachtchi with the blazing start, 7 out of 7, and then Kramnik's great score that helped Kramnik to achieve his highest ever rating. He's back in the second spot in world's ranking. But nonetheless, Wesley had a great tournament, not inferior to anyone's. So how did he do this? Well, Wesley had, I believe, a great combination of confidence, which represented itself in quick and resolute play. And also, he combined that confidence with his newfound maturity, the outcome of his going through tough tournaments of Grand Chess Tour this year and some other premier events that he played in the past 2 years. Wesley So really came around finally to be a legitimate, whatever it is, top 5 in the world, top 10 in the world. But I mean, it's all, we all have our favorite players there. It doesn't matter. But the fact remains that Wesley is there. And maybe there's only one man left, who can claim supremacy over Wesley So, and that's Magnus Carlsen. Alright, so how did Wesley do it in this game? First, very solid opening play. Now the pawn goes to d5 and this line. Now that's in English, right? But we can look at this as some kind of a dragon with covers reversed. And what's up with the fianchetted bishop on g7? Also somewhat unusual position of the white knight on c4. Well, it's e5 anyway. Going into this, and white plays this move rook c1. You'll see how important it is, because already at that moment, with the knight on c4 only supported by the d-pawn, black is contemplating the shot e4. So white really has to play rook c1, it's commonly played. Now we get to this position. h6, quiet preparation, taking away the g5 square. And now Pansulaya attacks the pawn on e5. Now white is able to do this because his knight is on c4. And he does it at the right moment before black managed to play g5, clearing the g6 square for the knight. It seems like black's uncomfortable. So he had to play f6. Look at all these pawn moves there. But this all can be considered preparation. Eventually black has more space thanks to the pawn on e5, and he's gonna start his play one way or another, here or there. And white, who's solely relying on his pieces to get to some squares, well, has to be careful not to let this go too far, because eventually he may be overrun. I think Pansulaya mainly was concerned with black's play on the king side. The above-mentioned move g5, followed by knight g6, and then possibly the f-pawn can move, and so on. He really didn't expect anything to happen on the queen side. And he went queen d2. Alright, so he's hitting the pawn on a5. Well, I don't know what else he's doing. Maybe bringing the queen to b2, but no, well, working on that diagonal is pretty much a fruitless affair because the pawn on a5 obviously is supported. Now, I would like to investigate a different approach to this position. That's something that I probably would consider here. I mean, it all starts with the move d4, right? I mean, we're looking at this, so now the bishop is blocked, so we can strike in the center. If everything is exchanged on d4, then white has a great position, with 4 against 3, which are weakened already on the king's side, and active pieces, great bishops, and all that. But we understand, of course, that black is not going to take. Black is going to play e4. Standard move. And now, well, yeah, white's position is not, doesn't shine really anymore. Well, he has the pieces, knight on d2 and bishop on g2, restricted by the e4 pawn. Black has full control of the key d5 square, and I can understand why white doesn't want this to happen. I wouldn't. So, how do we prepare d4? To make sure that the opponent cannot answer with e4. Now I have a radical suggestion here, to play e4. Now, okay, maybe it's 12 moves too late, and you should have started the game with e4, but nonetheless, interesting. I mean, I know everything about the d4 square, I realize, but if black moves the knight over there immediately, then we can trade, right? And then the pawn on a5 is maybe lost. And at any rate, black would have to take, and d3 pawn will not be weak anymore. Black can play bishop g4, with the idea of later playing the knight to d4 and maybe taking back with the queen. But in the process, he has to part with the light square bishop. Now, white will have play of his own then, one way or another. Even if d4 becomes impossible, you can use the light squares, for sure. I don't know, to me e4 would be a principled move to play in this position. One last thing there is the tactical move knight b4. And you can expect this from Wesley So, of course. He's looking to play concrete lines, and here black moves the knight there and hits both pawns on d3 and a2. And the last thing white wants is to trade like this, because then a5 is open, dark squares are weak. Even the move d4 doesn't seem to be able, doesn't seem enough, to make up for these problems. So we don't take on b4, of course, under no circumstances. Now we're gonna look at tactics. Takes there, take on b7. I assume queen c8. And now white goes knight c5. Giving up the exchange like this. Yeah, sometimes that's what you have to do. Come to think of that, white has a pretty decent compensation. The knight on c5 is a great piece. It may be exchanged if needed for the bishop on e6, may be supported with b4. d4 is still in play. And it's really, really worth it for white to try that. Yeah, Eugenio, he had a fantastic tournament. Indeed. I mean, the Olympiad, in a lot of cases, just brings the best in people. Like when you no longer feel like playing in this endless string of individual events and mainly like opens, whatever, you're just tired of running the same circles year after year. But when you play for your team, for your country, that's a different feel. And that's where, I mean, you can come back, you can, you feel younger and you can do things. I mean, I noticed that oftentimes the veterans, they play extremely well. And now looking at Kramnik, Kramnik played way better, than he played in the summer in Dortmund. He tried very hard in Dortmund, but somehow things were not quite working for him. And before that, in the Rapid and Blitz events in Paris and Leuven, Belgium, he was just unrecognizable. He looked totally flat. But he came back and played extremely well. And more interesting now to see how Kramnik performs in the Town Memorial that is gonna start in 10 days in Moscow. We'll talk about this a little later. So anyway, Queen D2. No, this is the move that allows black to seize the initiative. But okay, with the move A4. But still, white could have played his Queen B2 and at least sit there, like protecting the pawn on B3. He probably thought that B5 that B5 is unlikely to be played because of the weakness on the C file. So he played bishop b2, opening up the rook. But Wesley is a concrete player, right? So he looks at this and says, hey, why not? Moreover, he brings the knight to hit b3 and not only win a pawn, but also make this fork. Already, I don't see any way out for white. I mean, I can probably struggle one way or another, down a pawn or possibly give up the exchange in some various ways, but ultimately black just stands better, and I will show you what happened in this game. Knight g5. No, looking for tactics. Not quite getting it. Obviously he counted on queen takes and then queen takes e7. Where white would be quite okay. But in comes the in-between move. And also interference with the white queen. No longer getting to e7. So it's either playing like down a piece or sacrificing this way. Now right, I got a rook and a pawn for two minor pieces. It could be a pretty long affair, right? I mean, one can imagine that in open files like this, white could be able to trade queens and rooks, and then he will defend for a long time, and it's not entirely clear if white can even win. If black can even win this game. Wesley makes sure it doesn't happen, His play is extremely purposeful, and he's aiming at the white king. The strength of the minor pieces is that they combine well together with the queen, and if needed with the rook. And it's just more pieces that go through, somehow get through to the white king, which of course is weakened by the absence of the light square bishop. Now knight d4, trades, rook there, and then just f5. Not an attempt to consolidate. No. It's just f5, f4, never wasting a second. When this knight is chased away, we'll be dealing with bishop h3 and a lot of things. So now, white's really only hope is somehow, I don't know, play something like queen b8, I guess. But queen b8 doesn't really make a threat. I mean, it makes a threat of trading everything, right? Exchanging queens and then rooks. And he's not going to be given time to do this. Now, knight to c4. Possibly counting on... Yeah, white is also counting on blocking this key diagonal, possibly with the move queen b7, although you can't really move the rook away because e2 is hanging. But this is like the most energetic. Now I'm thinking that queen b8 loses to this. The rook's deflected and then queen's lost. Or else, on the next move, black will just capture the rook on b2 with the bishop. e4. Well, great continuation. So white's position is being ripped to shreds. Obviously, queen takes d8 doesn't work because there black has bishop c8. What did Pansulaya do? He played e3. Alright. Now the power of the bishops. Now the bishops will do everything. And centralization. Now the queen comes to d5. This is it, right? Queen takes d4, followed by attack on the white king, mates. The pinned bishop at least covers the king. He played rook f2, takes. Black could have won with playing d2, because I think in this line, king g2, black takes. And now this is not perpetual, because the other bishop controls f7. And of course the white rook remains pinned on the second rank, so there is no rook f7. In the meantime, when you take, the game ends with checkmate. So, well, Wesley didn't play this. Maybe he thought the team would get a little nervous if he allows even one check. So he played a nice, well, consolidating rook to the 6th. And then just grabbed this rook and forced resignation. Now, uneven skill levels make it way more interesting than having the top players pushing and shoving over draws. Yeah, I get to hear this more and more. I guess maybe this whole thing, with Grand Chess Tour will fail to generate real excitement. I mean, the excitement is in the media, but no, well, of course, I mean, the media, and I'm not even talking the chess media, they get excited over stuff, a lot of people couldn't care less. So the chess media also doesn't have monopoly on our thoughts. They can gush over, like this great tournament in St. Louis and all that, and they show us pictures of Kasparov and Rex Sinquefield and the smiling Caruana and all others. But I mean, we look at the games and we look at the intrigue in the tournament, and it was largely lacking. I, among many others, is seriously disappointed with this whole thing. To me, it just took our best players out of other tournaments, and I mean, they obviously well compensated for that, but as far as answering the call, providing us with best chess competition ever, I think this whole project should be scrapped. Well, now we talk about the Chess Olympiad. All right, so well, there is some talk. Okay, then this whole thing ended. The Ukrainians, I'll tell you the whole story. They thought they won because they beat Slovenia by a larger margin, and their captains, they feverishly calculating, crunching down numbers, calculating this tiebreak system, which is pretty difficult. It's I think it's the points. So you take your opponents, throw away the last one, the one with the lowest score, and take their scores and combine them and multiply by. Rather not, don't combine. Take their score, multiply by the score you achieved against this team. Suppose they ended up with 40 points, right? But you beat them 3-1. Then your total against this team is going to be 120 points. And then you add it all up. Okay, whatever. Well, one advantage of this thing, it's impossible to figure out until pretty much all the matches ended. And that's why it doesn't become part of your strategy. You can't really rely on this. You could, for example, total points scored would be very easy to calculate. So a team going to the last round, would know exactly. Maybe they just need a tie, or they need to win by 2.5, or stuff like this. This one leaves everything open. They throw away the highest also. I am not sure, Anthony. Well, you know what? People who listen to my shows, they know very well. I absolutely despise, this relying on factual materials. Well, when sometimes even on purpose, I say I'm not sure, because I'm trying to keep this on a normal level of conversation rather than just snapping out my fingers and providing you with exact information. For that, there are other sources. I think they would take something away from this show and basically would mold me into something that I'm not and I don't really intend to be. So I welcome all corrections. When I tell you next time, for example, that Alexander Alekhine won the Baden-Baden tournament in the year 1924, and you tell me, no, he didn't win it, he finished second and it was in 1925, guess what I'm gonna tell you, guys? I'm gonna tell you, thank you. I see it corrected. That's all I can say. What about Turkey? I don't know, what about it? Well, did they have a good Olympiad? I think they did. No, well, I'm a bit cautious, to really shovel praise on teams that managed to crack top 10. Well, it really depends a lot on the pairings, last round here and there, and no, I don't know, but I'm sure they had a decent tournament. Yet I know that Canada finished 11th, but Canada played the last round on board 1. Okay, so they lost to the US, but more about this later. No, well, Turkey, whatever they did, I don't recall them playing a match against any of the top teams. Did they play the United States? I don't think so. Did they play Russia? I'm not sure. Did they play India or Ukraine? I remember they played Norway. I do remember that. So, not to take anything away from the Turkish team. No, they kind of went little bit below the radar for me. Now, Sonnyborn Burger seems ridiculous as the first tiebreak. Suppose Ukraine won gold despite losing their individual match with the US. No, well, yeah, but I mean, some teams will. So you think that the face-to-face match has to count more as first tiebreak? No, the problem with this that it's known, right, and would dictate strategy. As I said, the whole purpose of inventing some weird, something that you cannot calculate beforehand is to leave that element of uncertainty for the last round. Well, anyway, so the last round, right? Once again, it all came down to Wesley So. Now, Fabiano did the job. On board 1, he faced old Soviet stalwart Evgeny Bareev, who I played not once, and once I played him in a very critical game in the penultimate round of World Team Championship when we were leading, and the US played Russia, and I failed. I had probably a winning endgame, and I failed to convert my advantage, and they overtook us in the last round. So that hurts, Every time, I recall Bareev, I just get angry with myself again. Not to blame Evgeny, so he just played chess moves. Anyway, so now he settled in Toronto, Canada, and took the burden of leadership in the Canadian team, and it worked out very well for them. Well, it's not like Bareev crushed anybody on board 1. He held his own. He lost a couple of games. He lost to Caruana. He lost to Shirov when they played Latvia. But he beat Elyanov. He always competed, So he wasn't coming out on board 1, just to make an occasional draw and meekly go down the slaughter, like when face somebody stronger. Well, Bareev is competitor, and besides his experience and his rather acidic sense of humor that he possesses, probably somehow glued the team together. And I noticed that younger players like Kovalyev on board too. Now, okay, this guy is a transplant from Argentina and he studies in the United States. Anton Kovalyev studies at the University of Texas at Brownsville. So he played fantastic on board too. Well, Eric Hansen, a good friend of mine, played extremely well on board 4. They scored a lot of points. And even the old guy, Lisiège, who I don't think is a full-time player anymore, Alexander Lisiège, and I haven't seen him play in any tournaments. But he kind of got caught in this excitement, and he played reasonably well on board 3 and has done a great job. And this is the key game. Now, I gotta tell you this. The match, Hansen beats Shankland on board 4. That levels the score. Nakamura gets nothing out of the opening, and it's fairly quick draw, besides Hikaru was black. So it's all to this game. And Wesley played some line of the kind of attack that is not considered very dangerous for black, but he managed to stay ahead on the clock and pose problems. But his opponent, Lisiège, was playing like man possessed, so he just kept finding moves. And here he plays. Bareev was number 4 in the world, I remember that. Yeah. Now, Wesley seemed to have no real weakness in his game. He could become world champion. Yeah, you're probably right. He could. I don't know. I don't really know Wesley's ceiling. I don't know. Maybe even he doesn't know. Possibly this game, shows one area where maybe he could use some improvement, but the situation was kind of marred by the tournament situation, the team competition, the decisive game. And I think it affected Wesley. But anyway, here he had to make a decision. Now, the bishop came to blockade the pawns. Now, if you immediately move the queen away, supporting your rook, then you're not moving your pawns. And in fact, it's black who will have active play with some moves like rook a2 and whatever. So he makes the right decision, brave decision, to give up the exchange. And most importantly here, he doesn't take the pawn on c4, but goes knight e4, introducing another factor in the position, is the attack on the black king. Now this, knight takes. And Lisiège had to move to the corner, because I thought if he moves here, then queen e5 sets up double check. So this is no longer enough, right? Double check. Then the king is flushed out. I mean, this is probably lost for black. It's probably mating attack. Most likely, I'm sure it is. Not to mention the lost rook. In order to stop this, in reply to check, black had to go to the corner. Now queen e5 is ineffective because there is queen f5. So Wesley goes for this. That begins a series of knight maneuvers that were extremely difficult to handle for his opponent and time trouble. Perhaps Wesley realized, being objective player as he is, that white didn't really have a win, but he did his utmost to confuse his opponent. Now comes rook e8, this fork, queen f5. It's understandable that Lisiège wants to bring the queen closer to the king to provide some protection. Although he probably could have just ignored this. Just ignore this pawn on f7. I don't know how exactly white is getting through here. I don't know what the right move here is. Just c3? Where is the mate? I mean, you can give checks, queen f7, queen f6. But you can only mate if you bring the rook over. The black can also defend by playing rook a7 at the right moment. Also, don't forget about one more thing here. Say if we do this, check there, and now triumphantly we play knight g4, expecting the game to be over, right? Knight h6 mate. There's gonna be a little spanner in the works here. That's counterplay. No, White's lucky, if he blunders this, that he still has king h2 and still has the mate idea. Yeah, I don't know. Well, truth to tell, when it comes down to all this and probably plays h5, I don't think there is mate here. Well, it's just the queen and knight cannot coordinate that effectively and with checks. And without checks, black obviously has tons of material. So I expect this to be a draw, one way or another. But yeah, this line proves to me that queen e2 was actually possible, but queen f5 is not much of a mistake. The game continues, and all eyes on this game already. Well, by that time, Hansen already grabbed, he was up a pawn, but okay, being up a pawn, it was actually a theoretical line. It was Shanklin's preparation, which, okay, I don't want to rain on the parade, but no, obviously also a case of nerves. To me, like, to choose a line where black gives up a pawn and play all these moves while gaining the time on the clock thanks to the increment, that's what Shanklin did, was hardly the best decision for this match play, because you never know. You basically leave yourself only with the possibility to make a draw, and he wasn't able to do this. He got outplayed, and already by that time he was losing. Yeah, Wesley had to win, so he plays this move. Okay, king g7. Now, alright, so we have a situation. White has a good position, right? Two connected passed pawns and knight in the middle. Well, should probably play forward. But it's difficult to queen the pawns, right? I mean, the d4 pawn sits there pretty much supporting the knight, right? Black can do this. I don't know if you want to separate this pawn from the d pawn that far. Probably not. We can play knight d7. So we created another supported square. And I believe, had this been Sinquefield Cup, and the opponent is Magnus Carlsen or Vladimir Kramnik or Levon Aronian, Wesley probably would play this way. But here in this match situation, he's thinking black will take, right? Now, this is one of those that you call borderline positions. Is that a white win? Is that a draw? We don't know. White will play it for a long time. But one thing for sure is gonna happen, is that black's clock situation will improve. He's gonna be able to play next few moves quite quickly, build up some time, and it's gonna take a lot of time before white start making threats again. From a point of view of posing problems and confusing the opponent, Wesley didn't think that was the right decision. So he went for this one. There is some kind of a vague idea at some moment as you move the knight away to play d5 check. But it allows black to activate. The rook comes to the second. Now knight d3. No, he had to do this, otherwise the rook comes from c2. No, as it always happens, rooks do their best when they control the opponent's passed pawns from behind. So he tried this. Stopping the check. Now this roundabout maneuver. No, it doesn't look entirely solid, right? Play Scotch Gambit. Derp. What is this? I'm not playing, right? I mean, it says right there, I'm showing you games from Chess Olympiad. Incredible. What a derp question it was, eh? Or request, rather. Knight c7. So, I mean, we'll be wasting our time if we look at any kind of deep plan executed here by White. No, he's just playing random moves trying to confuse the opponent. I believe that Wesley was quite desperate in this situation. He thought, like, if he doesn't win, then okay, and the match is drawn, and he would be the scapegoat. Although it would be very unfair, of course, because he had a great tournament anyways. Now comes this rook e3. His edge is really inspired here, so he's playing tactically, obviously, for the mate. And then queen c1 and h6. h6 is important because now the queen is protected. And now d5. Basically, here we have the defining moment of the entire tournament. The entire 2 weeks of great chess festival and people meeting each other and new stars introduced, old stars, they shine again, and organizers and the millions of dollars spent on this whole thing. But it all comes down to this, because this is the game that made the final result and made something that is going to be remembered for a long time. The pawns are not going anywhere, particularly when the black rooks are behind the pawns and doubled up on the second rank. Like, for example, you play, I don't know, d6. No, just take here. Double up. Well, black just wants to take and do the standard perpetual check. If the white rook goes up, then it doesn't support the pawns. Now, well, every player has done this. When you get real desperate, then you know that there is not enough in the position. You sort of try to muscle your way through the game by, just doing whatever. Now, speaking of Fischer, right? You remember that book, How to Beat Bobby Fischer, by Edmund Madness. Remember, he collected all Fischer's losses and analyzed them, and also kind of classified them by breaking them down to categories, what caused Fischer to lose the game. And I remember there were 3 categories there. One was got outplayed. I guess it happens even to Bobby Fischer. 2, blunder. Everybody blunders. But there was also category number 3. Try to win too hard. And surprisingly, a large percentage of Fischer's losses fell into that category. So, any player deals with this. You're facing, that last round game of an open, and then you know that the draw is nearly equal to loss. I mean, maybe you get some pocket change, a couple $100 at the best, but a big prize which is measured in thousands, it can only be taken by winning the game. But there is nothing on the board that indicates you win, and then, you do things like this. Alright, I don't know, what else after rook d3? Push a different pawn? c6 or take on... It's just nothing works here. Well, I mean, the rooks get behind and it's basically a draw. It's basically equal position. Well, fortune smiled on the US team. Maybe in some ways, it's the, reciprocating for some tough luck, that now I remember from my own experience, like maybe that game with Bareev or what happened in the 98 Elite Olympiad when we came to the last round leading the tournament. We actually led the tournament for 11 rounds out of 13, only to see Russia crashing through, destroying Holland by the count of 3.5 and taking gold medals, while we only managed a 2.5 to 1.5 win over China. But, well, now it smiled, the US team, Queen E5. I mean, a cute move, right? Threatening Rook E1, but guess what? You can take. No, mate can be avoided. Mate can seriously be avoided here. Terrible hallucination. There was this. Now, alright, you can claim here that maybe this, but I mean, still, there is the F1 square. I mean, the all-around blunder was incredible. But there is a clear win for white, of course. There is no need to play Rook F7. That's just this check. Now king goes there, and then there is another check. And it's not necessarily about d6, which also defends everything and wins the game. White can actually checkmate. Upon seeing what he has done, after the move Queen A1, Alexander Litsiesh extended his hand and congratulated Wesley So, and by extension the American team, with winning not just one game, not just a match, but the chess Olympiad. It did happen. Alright. As the story goes, it was reported, nonetheless, the Ukrainians who scored 3.5 over Slovenia thought they won the tournament. Apparently, they didn't calculate the tie breaks correctly. Then they realized that there was one match going on between Germany and Estonia. Sounds a bit strange, right? Germans, they won a European Championship a few years ago, and now in the last round they play in Estonia. Honestly, they were not playing very well, or maybe loss of Arkady Naidich, who was their top player for many years. Maybe they yet to overcome that. But anyway, why was the match between Germany and Estonia important? Because Ukraine, among their opponents, counted Germany. And they beat the Germans only by the count of 2.5 to 1.5. Therefore, not taking a whole lot of points from these guys. So should Germany finish with a higher score than a team from Jordan? Now, this is unbelievable. This blows my mind. Germany needed to win the match to get to finish higher than Jordan? How is it possible? Yet, that was true. Suppose Germany doesn't win this match against Estonia. It's a 2-2 tie. Then Ukraine gets the Jordan counted as their opponent. And those guys, they crushed by the score of 4-0. Then they would have gotten the extra points that would move them over the top, and Ukraine would have won. Look, every team deserves the gold when they win it. I can show my regrets that, whatever. We actually won it once, not Olympiad, but 1993 World Team Championship. Look it up. Lucerne, Switzerland. Kamsky board 1, Yermo board 2. We finished ahead of everyone, including the Russians. So, well, I know the feel of this. But, okay, fine. Well, the results stand. I'm just telling the whole story that how it all depended on the seemingly irrelevant match between the German team that had a terrible Olympiad and the team from Estonia. Well, finally, in one game, which I even took a look, there were two games. So the score was actually 1-1. There were two games where Germans had advantage, but the Estonians were defending tough. And one of them actually defended in the end. But before that, a guy had perpetual check. And he gave a wrong check with the queen and allowed the German player to win the game. the Estonian guy. So drama, well, those things, part of the excitement of the team chess competition. Now, I don't know if a lawyer was needed to figure out, maybe a mathematician. Apparently John Donaldson figured it out. Well, I saw a snapshot of his, just some scrap paper where he wrote everything down by hand, and apparently numbers were correct. Well, speaking of the English team, it was kind of up and down for them. They did a great thing, well, by beating China, the score of 3-1, thanks to wins by Mickey Adams on board 1 and Nigel Short on board 4. Actually, I mentioned some of the veterans. I talk about Eugenio Torre, but of course Nigel Short needs to be mentioned. Almost like a forgotten man there, and he accepts playing on board for, I think he was even the 5th player. Yeah, I think the lineup for the English team was Adams, McShane or Howell. I'm not sure who was board 2 or board 3. Then there was Gawain Jones, and then Nigel Short. I don't know really what happened, but I didn't see Luke McShane playing a whole lot in the second half of the event. I'm not really sure. Maybe he was in bad form. Maybe he had bad record by that time or whatever. But anyway, it seemed like Adams, Howell, and Jones and Short was the lineup for the second half of the Olympiad. And with that lineup, they defeated China 3-1. But there was this episode happened during this match that I read about it immediately after it happened, and I don't know if you heard of this, but this is what I want to discuss. It happened, this game between Nigel Short and Li Chao of China. Li Chao is, all Chinese guys are super strong. This guy is 2750, actually based out of Europe. Reached 2750 by playing team tournaments, open tournaments. Only got to play Norway Classic as the last minute substitute player. Didn't really distinguish himself, but he's playing in Moscow in the Tal Memorial, and who knows, he may have a good result over there. Anyway, so Li Chao is clear favorite, right, going against Nigel in that game. Luke is always rusty and Howell underperforms due to time trouble. Yeah, I remember playing some open tournaments together with David Howell, and then looking at it, in some ways he reminds me of Ray Robson. No, not because of some whatever admixture. No, it's not about that. He reminds me of Ray Robson of the US because clearly, they're both very talented, and very well prepared young players. But somehow their time management is just atrocious. Atrocious time management. Why would a young player like this, be in time trouble? It's almost like they experienced this permanent confidence crisis. Well, they couldn't beat Peru, but Peru has Peru didn't have Grande Zuniga, didn't show up. There would be another veteran. Anyways, a story about Nigel. You know what happened, right? It's a very tense game. Actually, maybe I can even look it up. Yeah, let me show you this game because it's really worth looking at this. It will take me a second. Bear with me, guys. Yeah. Okay, that's insanity, alright? So that this position, right? I mean, Li Chao is attacking. He brought 4 pieces to the attack, and he already got his pawn to h7, but Nigel's king is hiding behind the pawn. Now the task is to somehow break through on the G file. And at this moment, an arbiter comes to Nigel short during the game. Maybe not exactly at this moment, but during the game. As Nigel pointed out in his interview yesterday, he said, doesn't matter if it happens on move 2. Well, it happened during the game. And says, Mr. Short, please come with me. And says, why? No, you've been randomly selected to be checked for electronic devices. I mean, like, what? During the game? So Nigel, okay, it was reported as Nigel told him to kiss off. I think at best it was piss off, if not something stronger. I know Nigel pretty well. And it's like, and then it's not the end of it. The arbiter keeps on talking, and some more people keep talking to Nigel during the game, threatening to forfeit him, for not complying to the rules. The rule that was allegedly passed as, okay, not allegedly, it was passed, but allegedly with a lot of controversy, because they needed a certain number of team captains to approve it. And I spoke with one team captain, that was Ivan Sokolov, a coach of Iran. And Ivan said, his voting was a resolute no on this, because he doesn't believe that the players should be bothered during the game. Whatever happens before or after the game, and of all targets to choose, that's what Nigel said. So Nigel was overheard screaming at these people, I've played a world championship match, for crying out loud. Who the hell do you think you are to accuse me in cheating? Well, it's just nonsense, And then, all right, thankfully. All right, to this game, right? What happened here? Rook e7 plays Nigel. Obviously, he was rattled and upset, but yet, he plays this defensive move. Now, time trouble is seriously looming for both players. Li Chao lands this punch, knight e5. Hitting the rook on c6, and possibly rook d6 was the right move, most likely. Because white is yet to break through. The rook stays there to control f6. But Nigel takes. And now the story of a tournament for the Chinese players. Remind you that they were defending champions. Moreover, they also won World Team Championship. So they had the double crown. There's no triple crown in Team Chess, but maybe... Okay, well, they cannot win the European Championship. Oh, the Asian Championship, they didn't win it. India won it. So they came a little short of a triple crown in chess. But one would expect Li Chao to find a solution. It's obviously the breakthrough f6. Now, I just want to show you one line here. And then we will return to the story of Nigel. So after pawn takes, white cannot quite mate yet, right? The bishop protects. So first he deflects the bishop. Now this, okay, this is trivial, right? Bishop f6 check, takes, rook g8, mate. The queen now protects h7. But in a position like this, you can miss mate in one. And I wouldn't blame you for that. Because of the extreme clutter of pieces over there. And they just somehow weirdly positioned. For sure. So, bishop c4, right? Maintaining control over this. Material is not important here. Yeah, you can take on c6, whatever. I didn't find this move, right? The computer found it. It's probably not the only winning move, but a striking move at that. What say you guys? In chess composition, This is known as interference, and it's named after a Czech composer of, I believe, first half of the 20th century, Plachuta. So the Plachuta interference. Maybe I mispronounced his name. I apologize for that if there anybody who can correct me on this. But I have seen different spellings with the K, with the CH, and I don't know. I'm trying my best. But anyway, the point is, right? Throws the queen there. Doesn't even take a pawn. Doesn't even take a pawn. And this is the point, right? If you take with the rook to maintain protection of f6, then you block the bishop. And rook g8 mates. The white bishop now supports. If you take with the bishop, then you block your defenders on the 6th, and then rook g7 and bishop g7 mates. Insane. I mean, this illustrates two things. First of all, the strength of white's attack, and secondly, how insanely complicated this whole thing was. Now, two things come to my mind. f6 was not played. Now, that goes to show that something was lacking, in the Chinese players this year. I don't know. They just fail to impress anywhere they play. Ever since they won that Olympiad and World Team Championship, well, they still not quite welcome in in these elite tournaments. Okay, Li Chao got this last moment invitation Norway chess, had to postpone his wedding of all things. It goes to show how desperate he was to play in a tournament like that. But obviously no preparation, didn't do very well. Ding Liren played in Sinquefield Cup, but I mean, he was actually the best player for the Chinese team in this Olympiad. He played on board too. Wei Yi, the young guy, he's still only 17. 2 years ago we were nominating him to play Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match. The guy was over 2700 before he turned 16. Maybe even before he turned 15. And he's been spinning wheels ever since. And Li Chao here doesn't play f6. Instead he plays this. And now I gotta give it to Nigel. With all this unnerving, episode with the arbiters and all these threats that, keep on playing your game, we're gonna forfeit you anyhow. And the possible repercussions and all that, he's, and the time trouble and the danger to his king. He finds moves. Now I think, this defense rather coolly, queen h5. White is actually fishing only for perpetual check. He doesn't have an attack anymore. And maybe he had it. Maybe this was unfortunate. Apparently there was a move. There was this. Check king h1. The threat is double check, followed by mate from h8. I think it takes then. Oh goodness me. I don't know. I'm not sure. That somehow somebody claimed that there was a draw here for white. But it's just jungle out there and time trouble, and only computers can tell you what the deal is. To me, the fact was that bishop c5 was played. So he's trying to deflect the queen, right? He's playing for the perpetual. That's his perpetual. Well, it still would not be enough to save the match for China, right? The commotion absolutely threw both players off. I mean, anybody, I don't know, it threw me off. I don't know, I just take this personally. like, I don't know. To me, it's, no, well, in chess, I understand. We all compete, we rip at each other's throats, and then, okay, sometimes, well, whatever, there's some things that are unfair, done or said in the heat of the battle or immediately after the game. But in one thing, we always knew, chess players, that we in this boat together, and we have to protect our interests. We didn't have a players organization, and this fake thing, called Association of Chess Professionals, is just a front for a couple of guys, to get free trips, all over the world. They don't do anything. They're just chess players. They don't know anything about labor laws. They're just nothing. They just did this thing, because that was their way to carve a little niche for themselves. In a way, they're not different from FIDE. I'm referring to Emil Sutovsky and Pavel Trigubov and the whole, merry band, of basically has been or never been chess players that now represent. Well, where is Sutovsky now? When an arbiter, obviously a non-chess guy, comes in, and bothers Nigel Short, which is a legend of our game and a treasure during the game, where is the statement from Sutovsky? Saying we're going to sue FIDE now for $1 million, for emotional distress they caused to one of our grandmasters. That's what they should be doing. But anyway, my point is that still, even if we're not officially represented by anything, but we stand up for each other. Well, yeah, maybe there are a few letters written by chess players. Maybe there are a few words, spoken, when everybody heard, so they make this people butt off a little bit. I'm referring to this organizers and FIDE functionaries, whatever they are, and I mean, sometimes you have to put them in place, because if you don't defend us chess players, then nobody's gonna defend us. And Nigel, I applaud, he said, like that, he said, well, keys off, okay, I use the officially approved term, and he completed the game, and he won the game. He didn't even take on c5 here. He saw the tactics. He played queen h6, winning move. Gave up a bishop, which is not easy to do, and started his counterattack in horrible mutual time trouble. And played f2 check. That's the presence of mind. And then this great move, threatening to queen. And finally he wins, because everything comes together, and basically black is either checkmating on e2 or capturing the pawn on f5 and then winning the rook and so on. Great win for Nigel, but is the battle won? For how long, chess players will tolerate this kind of abuse? Okay, it's done in our best interest. Okay, well, so is the TSA, take your shoes off, thing at American airports and probably in many airports, throughout the world. Alright, so they always know better, what's good for us. Okay. Common sense. Oh, we don't want to profile players, okay, pardon me, passengers, that kinda, more likely to commit a terrorist act or have a cell phone in their pocket and cheat. So that's why we're gonna body search a 78-year-old, grandmother, and we're gonna body search Nigel Short. Fantastic. All right, is this the end of rant? Before I really get myself in trouble. Now, I predict. Now, this Olympiad often, it's every other Olympiad, right? With the elections and FIDE presidency and all that, this went very quietly. Aside of that thing, and also, another ridiculous thing. I read it on Susan Polgar's website. Apparently, these guys tried to limit the number of visits to the bathroom. And they said before going to the bathroom, you have to inform the arbiter that you go into the bathroom. How far is this thing going, eh? Anyway, one way or another, well, I can only hope that in 2 years, when the next Olympiad is taking place in Georgia, well, we're gonna have some changes over there. And I'm not necessarily referring to Kirsan Alimzhinov. Well, that Kirsan is there, but I mean, there are people who thrived, under Kirsan's leadership for so many years, and I will name the names there. That's Leong, that's Makropoulos, that's Azmai Parashvili, and you know what they did, so it's just personal vendetta. Azmai Parashvili is no longer friends with Silver Danailov, and so to exact his revenge, they now not only banned Danailov from taking any official position anywhere in any chess organization or association. I think they tried to ban Bulgaria as the entire country from participating in FIDE events. I wouldn't put it past them. These guys, like somebody has to take a good old broom, and sweep this garbage, to the trash can where they all belong. Just if you don't exactly know what I'm talking about, and you don't have time to read about the exploits of the above-mentioned individuals, just do me a favor and look them up and just look at their faces. Just the faces, on their pictures. Are they kind of people you can trust? There are many scandals, them, like, I don't know, caught with prostitutes, and in their hotel rooms, while an official feed the business. Corruption of the last degree. So basically, I know we have to wait at least 2 years. Nothing happened. I didn't expect anything to happen. Important thing that now, of course, is the World Championship match. Magnus, who, as many people believe, will retain his title, will have a lot of say in these matters. Now, maybe not in the matters, like who orders who to go to the bathroom and at what time and for what reason. But, I mean, his authority over the world champion should extend to world championship qualification system, which he already went on record, criticizing publicly that this is a long and drawn out and stupid affair, and he doesn't want to sit there and wait for 2 years for the next guy to show up. So one way or another, this is a chance for chess now to make important changes, and we'll be there to cover new events and to follow our heroes. And the next step for us is the Tal Memorial in Moscow. Leaving the playing area has to be treated with more suspicion these days. No, right. When they write this contract about world championship matches and candidates matches in the past, well, actually, these bathrooms were considered part of the playing area. Now, as you enter the tournament hall, I've played some FIDE events when this whole thing started. I don't think it changed. It's done this way, that you go through a detector, so they kind of check of whatever, if you have any devices, whatever they might be. And then you play your game. But when you go to the bathroom, you go to the player's bathroom, which is not accessible. It's isolated from the rest of the building. And basically you're in the back there anyway. So once you went through this detector for the first time, then you should be able to move about anywhere. Now, yeah, Jesus. I'm pretty pissed, with this whole thing. I don't know. Well, to me, it really has nothing to do with me, right? I don't intend to travel anywhere and, God forbid, to play in another FIDE event. People tell me go play World Seniors. I doubt I would ever do this, but of course, never say never. But I mean, at least as a former chess player who played a lot of knockout world championship, as they're called then, and 5 Olympiads I played, and then you name it, I mean, I remember this whole thing, and I don't really like the direction this thing is taken. We have those incidents appearing here and there. We had Wesley So forfeited at the US Championship. There's a little bit too much of power play on behalf of the of people whose best job basically is done when they're invisible, right? When you're a referee on the pitch, you know, like the last thing you wanna be, you don't wanna be in the center of attention. That means that you failed at your refereeing. I don't know. I can't really blame this random Azerbaijani or whoever he was, the arbiter guy. He was just following orders, but no, well, fine. A lot of people just say, I just followed orders, man. It wasn't me. I just followed orders. Well, anyway. All ends well that ends well. Nigel was not forfeited and he won this game. Alright, guys. So, I know I didn't go very deep on the chess, but I mean, you've seen all the games. You can find the games everywhere. The World Seniors is a nice warm place in the winter. I don't know. It's taking place in Germany, and is it really in winter? I don't even know. Well, they did one thing. For years it was like, what, 60? And now they made it... I mean, there are two groups now. It's 60 plus and 50 plus. Now, this is clearly an attempt to make money. I mean, what's 50? What's the... Where's the senior at 50? You know, what's in what world you're senior? I don't know. I don't understand this. No, obviously you're not as good at 50 as you were maybe when you were 25. But same applies to 40. Why don't they have, you know, like, well, whatever, 40 plus, 60? I think that's where they should stay. I don't know. Any other questions, you know, or something that you wanted to bring up before I sign off? Because I'm kind of done with chess. We've seen all these games already. Yeah, you have your clock stopped when you're taken away and searched. Yeah, at least they give you that. But no, you cannot stop the process that goes on in your head. I can tell you this, you know, that I played numerous tournaments in the US, and they held in hotels, you know, whatever. And sometimes, you know, you leave the board and you go and you just pace, you know. Some people don't do this, but I'm not the biggest pacer, probably. Peter Svidvar is. But I was pacing, you know, like somewhere, not very fast. Kind of thinking about my game in progress. And okay, that's what I do. Many times people come to me, they know who I am. They say, hey, Yerma, cool, you know, how you doing? And I go, look, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you now. My game is in progress. Most of the time they apologize. Some people take offense and says, yeah, I came here, you know, I paid my entry fee. That's what I basically pay you, you know, guys like me, you know, I pay you living, you know, right? You know, your prize money come off our entry fee pool, and you won't give me, you know, 1 minute of your time, you ass, and all that. Okay, well, I don't know. I've heard this. I've heard worse. Once I was there, and a couple of non-chess playing guys, they saw me kind of, I know I was slowly walking, you know, like on this hallway. And one guy says to another in a loud voice, hey, he paces like my pregnant wife. Okay, what do I do now? Bash their skulls together? I mean, everything that happens, you know, is during the game is distracting. Clearly, you know, the players... No, it's not like chess players are such fragile creatures that they cannot take a joke or anything. Most of the time we can take a joke. Well, the problem is rather, you know, that the joke comes in an appropriate moment. Like it or not, you know, like you concentrate, you try your hardest. Prognosis, whatever, for Tal Memorial. Magnus suggested, he hinted that he's interested in knockout tournaments. Funny, right? Ilyumzhinov finds himself a supporter 20 years later. Okay, Futal Memorial. A lot of people looking at Kramnik to continue his great play at Olympiad. I somehow think he will play okay, but not as great. I simply don't think that Vladimir has it in him physically for 2 great tournaments in a row. No, well, there is a lot of guys who kind of felt left out. Svidwar and Gelfand, they didn't play. Maybe they want to show that they can still do it. Anish Giri, 2 last place finishes in the last 2 tournaments he played. Time for him to rehabilitate himself. And then there is Nepomniachtchi. Well, he had 7 out of 7 and he was on track to gain a lot of rating points. He ended up losing to Wesley So and making 2 draws. He still gained some 10 rating points and he's around 2750. And he knows he needs more rating points. I'll go out on a limb and I tell you that Nepomniachtchi wins this tournament and gains another 15 rating points. I think Nepo is ready. He wasted some time, but his Magnus Carlsen's age, beautiful age, 26. I think Nepo's gonna do it. Alright, guys. Fun show we had, lots of questions. I really love you guys. And I don't know when I come back. Not this month. I've done my quota for this month. The only 2 shows a month. So let's look at the 2 weeks break and maybe I'll come back, in the first Thursday of October. Really look forward to it. Yeah, I didn't mention Levon Aronian, Visha Anand. Well, I mean, I don't know. I picked Nepo to win this tournament. Bye, guys.